Over the years, our family's had a share of health problems.
So prescriptions are a part of our life.
Before we went to the big box store,
We both thought it would help us save. But with the long lines and impersonal service, filling prescriptions became a chore. That's when a friend recommended D&H.
now Tristan knows our prescriptions. Brenda always helps us find the right vitamins. And after Dad's fall, Monica's been a real expert with all our home medical needs, all without the lines.
Trust and service.
That's our D&H.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Thursday, February the 20th. We have one guest today. He's a storyteller. His name is Pablo. Just got one name, Pablo. Kind of like Cher. Welcome to Radio Friends, Pablo. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
You've been on here several times now. And
I couldn't count the time.
Yeah. Storyteller, you tell your stories as a first person, right?
First person.
And do you consider yours fiction or?
Generally, I would describe what I do as historical fiction. The one today isn't quite so fictional, but generally it is. I'll include myself in first person and even create a character for myself sometimes.
And you do a lot of your stories in costume also.
Yes.
And with props.
Yes, with
Right.
props.
So today, what is the story about?
The story today is about World War I and General Blackjack Pershing.
And this is a centennial of World War I.
We're in the centennial, now the 4-year centennial of World War I. Now, it started in 1914. That's been a while.
In August of 1914.
In August, started actually officially in August of 1914.
And in the story, are you going to get into when the United States?
I'll get into that.
All right. So I'll just stop and I'll say here is Pablo with a story concerning World War I.
My name is John J. Pershing. You may remember me a little better as General Blackjack Pershing. Well, I'm proud to say that I was born and raised right here in Missouri, and I'm also, if you'll indulge me, I will kick in the information that I am the highest ranking general in American military history. They kept giving me stars. They gave me 6 stars, and I ran out of places on my uniform to put them, and I'm not exaggerating about that. You know, I graduated from West Point in 1886, and I had a number of military experiences, quite a number of military experiences, until the big one really hit. What we know today as World War I. We didn't call it that at the time, of course. But at that time, it hit the world, and it just shook the world. It was hard to believe what was happening there. And World War I came, and the Germans considered themselves, rightly or wrongly, surrounded by enemies, and they realized that they had to lash out at someone, and then they did. And they lashed out at France, and they hit France with a German army that was beyond belief. It was enormous. And of course, the French were not just real happy about being invaded. To make a long story short, it degenerated into trench warfare that went on and on and on for 4 long, ghastly years. Well, after that, of course, back home, we had to keep in mind that keeping ourselves out of the war was going to be quite a challenge. And I was watching from back home. I was watching what was happening. I was amazed at what I was seeing. From a tactical point of view, the French commanders were using a tactic called élan, which translates roughly into English, I believe, something like very vigorous attack, always on the attack. When in doubt, always attack, attack. And the French commanders were sending their young men into the field against the German trenches, entrenched German soldiers. And their troops were completely exposed as they attacked time and time and time and time again, following that tactic that they called élan. And by 1917, they had lost a generation of their young men. Can you imagine such a thing? A generation. And we were astounded to see this back home. A generation of young men lost, and for what? Why could it be? How could they do such a thing? And by 1917, the French infantry, they were nearing revolution or revolt against their own commanders. And I just shook my head in disbelief, as did my companions, other professional tacticians at home. How could they be doing such a thing? But they did. But then, I was back home in Missouri. I remember when I got the news. I was resting at home. And the president told me, we can no longer stay out of this war. General Pershing, take us to war. Well, I being the good soldier, I did exactly what I was told. And I remember how I felt. Yes, I remember how I felt when I set foot on French soil for the first time in 1917. Yes, I knew that I was there for a purpose, and so did the French. And of course the French were encouraged after all that they had endured. But there I was, and I had to do everything I could, and right at my heels were 2 million doughboys. And we teamed up with the British and the French, and we fought one battle right after another until the big one really hit, the Battle of the Meuse-Argonne. It was the largest battle in American military history. Long, long time. It took 6 long, horrible weeks until the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. The Germans had had more than they could take. And they signed the armistice, shouldered their weapons, and turned around and went home in defeat. Well, since that experience, every time I have a moment of quiet, when I was home in Missouri or Washington or any of the places I could have lived since then, every time I had a moment in which I could think, I would think back to that terrible war. And I try to find a reason for it all. And it just seemed to be a war that was not in pursuit of any particular lofty goal. It just defied belief that such a thing could happen. Yes, I know what happened. I know what happened. Yes, I know that. I could say on a certain day we used this tactic or that tactic. I could talk all day about the nuts and bolts of that awful war. But why it happened, it still escapes me. The war to end all wars, it certainly did not achieve that.
Yeah. So, Pablo, it's amazing. I'm sitting here watching you, and I feel the emotion as you take on another persona. You're a wonderful storyteller, taking us back in time and history. If people would want more information and contact you, how do they do it?
Well, he's on my website is windvoices.net.
Okay.
It sounds, or 573-581-3639.
Okay, Pablo, thank you so much for coming by
Certainly.
and sharing your talents with us. Tomorrow, Yvonne Matthews, Mabel Grimes. We're going to talk about Black History Month and some special poems. All right, our program directed by Travis McMillan, Reynolds Journalism Institute, audio, Pat Akers, KBIA. Our floor director is Rachel Gangware, and our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser. Bye-bye.